Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. Welcome everyone for joining us. I'm your host, Saima Daya, and together with Fatima Ashraf, we are the co-creators of Ray of God. Ray seeks to share feminine spiritual wisdom to help realize God in all ways and to align with justice, truth, and beauty. The energetic state of the feminine is our guiding principle and holds our intention. And we believe that all genders hold the feminine and masculine within themselves. While we are women-led and women-centered, we welcome and encourage all genders to join us in a safe, inclusive space, God willing. Ray does not seek to present a voice of expertise. We see ourselves as travelers along the way and learning with each step. Our ideas are constantly evolving, and we hope that you will join us on this journey to deeper consciousness. And I'd like to pass over to my co-creator, Fatima, now. Thank you.
Thank you, Saima Jan. Welcome everybody. We are delighted, perhaps even that is an understatement, to be offering this extension, this session as an extension of Rayfest 20. So Rayfest was a festival which we held last October, celebrating women of spirit. And it was a wonderful 2 days. We welcomed an incredible array of awesome women from many faiths and backgrounds who shared their rich experiences of finding their voices, shaping narratives within their traditions, and reclaiming sacred space. It was a wonderful 2 days. For those of you who were able to join us for that, you'll know that Woman Stands Shining was due to join us then, but it seems that the forces that be and that determine everything had other plans, and it was not meant to be in October because it was meant to be today on Valentine's Day that we would get this special time with her. And not only would we get the 30 or so minutes that were scheduled back in October, but that we would get this much longer period of time. So I feel all in all, the divine has been very generous. So we're really grateful that Woman Stands Shining has made time for us, and that we're able to bring this offering together for us all to experience and enjoy on this really special day. So I'm going to say a few words about Woman Stands Shining, also known as Pat McCabe, for those who may not know of her. She was born into the Diné Nation and was adopted by the Lakota Spiritual way of life. Her gifts are being an articulator of visions and dreams and symbols as the language of spiritual helpers reaching out to humanity, an enactor of spiritual counsel, a passionate daughter of the Mother Earth, and an upholder of Mother Earth's authority at this time. She speaks, prays, and loves internationally, fully claiming her global citizenship. Current investigations for the healing of the five-fingered ones are our use of Western science practices to participate in cause and effect, the deep spiritual gift of our consent as activism, and the reconciliation between men's nation and women's nation for functional polarity and thriving life. Woman Stands Shining, would you like to introduce yourself and take us prayerfully, open this gathering prayerfully in the beautiful way that you do?
Thank you so much, Saima and Fatima and Ray of God Fest, and thank you to each and every one who's come on this auspicious day. I dressed for our date, so I hope you appreciate that. And and over here, I'm in Taos, New Mexico today. So that's the very northernmost part of the state here, and it is snowing very gently and peacefully here. So I want to say thank you to this holy white medicine that has come to many places at this time, and just thank you for your beautiful way, your purification way, and for this moisture, for this holy water that you're bringing to us, so that we can live our lives, and that all life can be together as family this year. So I'll say I come from Diné Nation, and some people, as my daughter says, incorrectly know us as Navajo. And so I'll introduce myself in the way that we do and say she'e'ia tachi inishli aro ashin bashishchi ma'edishkeshne dashanale klauschi daushiche kwataostani inishli. So I'm telling you about my clans. We get our clans from our mothers, and those clans are very important community and social structures. I'm going to say they're love structures as well, that enter into the love that arises in ceremony, but also very practical love as well. So I'm very honored to be able to name my family that way. And then I was adopted into the Lakota Spiritual way of life, as was said, and so I was given the name Wiyakpa Najimwi, and that translates roughly in English to womaning, standing, shining, maybe. And I say I used to call myself woman stand shining, but I'm changing it to womaning, standing, shining, because I feel like as the female of our kind, I am an energetic, I am a catalyst, I'm something that's moving, moving through this world in a very special way and potentially a very holy way. In our languages, most of our languages are indigenous languages, are almost all verbs. And so to me, this is this recognition of the nature of reality that quantum physics is coming upon now, saying, wow, it's actually all energy. It's all moving. And so I say I'm actually just very slow molecules here, but but I'm in a constant state of motion, and I'm passing through. I have the honor of having a place on this Mother Earth right now, and I get to have it with you. And in this very moment, we get to share this time together. So I'm really honored. I've been very excited about this day coming, and yeah, just very grateful. So I wanted to start out actually, and sometimes the sound is a little funny, but I'm still going to do it anyway on Zoom. But I want to sing a song for us here, and this is a grandmother calling song. To invite in from all four directions that female energetic that reaches back and back and back physically in our lineage, but there are also grandmothers of the earth that are tenders of the earth and tenders of human beings, as I understand it here, and they're spiritual grandmothers. So I'm calling it in all those ways. And we say the grandmothers come and they make a beautiful place for the grandfathers to arrive as well. But this song was given to me. I was asking, because I was starting to be asked to speak in different places. This was about, 10 years ago. And I find myself in hotel lobbies and who knows where, and I didn't, it's a tender thing to sing our actual ceremony songs in public. It has to be they have to be tended very carefully. And so I asked for a song that I could sing anywhere to invoke, because as my younger sisters here are demonstrating, some of us like to begin everything with prayer. So I was given this song directly as I was driving between Taos, where I am now, and Albuquerque, where my mother lives, which is where I normally am. So anyways, as I sing this song, I'm going to sing 4 different rounds. So you'll hear when I'm going to start repeating again, probably. And so that means we're shifting direction. So we're going to start in the east. I just ask you to just invoke the feminine ancestral wisdom that comes through your line, that which helped to make it such that you could live and be here today. And also I invite you to really feel and picture those spirit grandmothers coming in, dancing from each of the 4 directions. So let's start that way. And if my sound goes a little funny, just stay with the intention. Hopefully we'll do fine. Wahaya, haya, I'm going to open with a prayer in words as well. Say, Wakantanka Tukashila, Unshimaka, Shamashache, holy people all around. It's me, Wiakpa Najinwin, coming before you on this holy day. Pitukile. I greet you on this beautiful day that you've made for each of us. And I ask that you take a good look at all my relatives here, all those who wanted to be here, maybe couldn't find their way here today for some reason. Just take a good look at each and every one in our bodies, minds, hearts, and spirits. And I ask that during this time that you bless us, that you help us to have right mind, right heart, right body, right spirit, to truly be able to receive all of the love and care that you intend for us, that you intend for us spiritually, but that you also intend for us through the gift of placing us on this sacred, beautiful, vital, diverse Mother Earth. Thank you. Thank you for placing us into such a beautiful, beautiful place. Thank you for the beautiful water. Thank you for the beautiful sky. Thank you for the beautiful mountains. Thank you for a holy star that is in constant conversation with our Mother Earth. And we are the dazzled children between these two passionate parents. Thank you for placing us in this place that way. I ask that you inform this time. We invite you to have your input here, both in the words that I have and in the questions, and even just what needs to arise. I just ask that you bless each and every one with courage and strength and a deep peace and a deep knowledge of the way that this world is made with so much love, so much love, so much love and light. Let what we do here today serve the very highest possibility for life, light, and love. Show us how to participate fully in the very highest possibility for life, light, and love. And we open our hearts, minds, body, spirit to truly receive this sacred gift of life today, today, today. So I say, aye, mitakuye, oyasin, for all of my relations. So. Thank you.
So gently, gently, friends. The next 35 minutes will be me asking womaning, standing, shining 3 questions so that we can enjoy her spirit-inspired responses. And then we will open up the Q&A so you dear ones can also put some questions forward, just so you know that we are recording the session. And how we will do this is that we will open up the chat when I ask Woman Stands Shining the 3rd question. The chat will open up and you can lodge your questions there. And after we have finished the 3 questions that I have asked, then I will check through the chat and I will identify. And if you wish to unmute, you can ask the question directly, or I will read it out. So perhaps when you ask your question, just indicate whether or not you wish to speak it, or whether you wish me to read it. So maybe you could just put speak or read by the question. And if that doesn't work, don't worry, we'll figure it out. So don't worry at all. After we've had the Q&A, we will come back to Womaning, Standing, Shining for some more of that beautiful prayerful medicine that she has already shared. She will offer a closing contemplation and a closing prayer. So if we're ready, hold on to your hearts, friends. It's already so moving. So, dear one, let's begin with a story that you told Saima and I, and you referred to it as dressing for the sun. Can you tell us about this and why it's become important for you at this time?
Thank you. So, you know, as I was heading into my slightly elder woman years, my mother just turned 97 on January 12th. So I can't say my elder woman years, certainly not in front of her. She's showing me how it's done. I'm like, wow, that's pretty impressive every day. And she has such a great sense of humor. But as I was leaving a certain aspect of being woman, and I should say that, you know, in Diné culture, one of our primary, I guess we'll say, deities is an entity known as changing woman. And for a long time, I didn't really know what that might mean. But the farther I travel on down this road, the more I understand, yes, indeed, changing woman, going through different epics of being human in this form. So as I was leaving, I left maidenhood, I left motherhood, and I was heading into this next phase. And I was pretty confused about what that might mean. Everybody was telling me that, you know, I might become invisible now to the world. This modern world doesn't have a whole lot of use for someone my age, at least on the surface. Actually, they're in desperate need of a woman my age, but they don't know it, or at least the media doesn't know it. And so, you know, I was angry about it. And so I went into a pretty deep inquiry at that point. And the way for some reason, the way it came to me to approach it was to ask, you know, what do we really mean when we say masculine? And what do we really mean when we say feminine? And this is not to say that I consider, I don't come from a binary gender point of view, but these are two energetics that are woven through the fabric of this whole creation, and including each one of us. And so I was curious about this. And I said, because those terms are so loaded with so much, you know, depending on the culture, but there must be something like essential and pure, you know, like light or like water or like, you know, like, but what is that? You know, I don't know what it is without a whole bunch of human story all over it. And so I was sitting in this ceremony, and the spirits responded to me, and they said, okay, now you're on to something. Now you're asking a good question. And so they said, you think you know what masculine is, but you don't. And you think you know what feminine is, but you don't. All you know is how they behave when you plug them into this power over paradigm. So sometimes you'll hear me refer to modern world paradigm. And so I also call it power over paradigm, because it's a place in which you must beat out somebody else in order to have what you need. And so power becomes really essential in that paradigm. And so they said, so you think you know, but all you know is how these two energetics behave when you plug them into a power over paradigm. But what if you were to plug them into a different paradigm? If you plug them into a different paradigm, they behave in a completely different way. And so I'll say that I've noticed this in terms of gender roles in my own cultures. In Lakota culture, in Diné culture, there are roles that the women hold. There are roles that the men hold. And I've come to learn that my biology gives me a spiritual capacity. So I, for one, am not signing on to this idea that gender is merely a cultural construct. I mean, aspects of it are, but there are aspects of it that are essential, like light and water. And so I've made a deep study of some of this myself. But as far as dressing for the sun, so while I was going through this big inquiry, I was told that I should go out and make offerings in the morning, that would be a good way to really find some truth, truthful answers, deep truth answers to these inquiries. And so I know how I'm supposed to do it, honestly, but I thought, well, some is better than none. So first I kind of like roll out of bed, the idea is to go out as that beautiful holy star is coming up over the horizon, right? And to be that child that's in between this Father Sun and this Mother Earth, and to be able to greet that holy star that gives life to all beings. And so so I roll out of bed and I stumble out in my pajamas and I'm like making my offering. And I think, well, this is a beginning anyway. And then I go back to bed and go to sleep, right? And so I do this for a little while. And then I'm thinking, your grandmas would definitely not approve of this. I think you need to plan on staying up for the day, when you do this. So I go out and I make my offering. Now I'm staying up for the day, but I'm still out there in my pajamas, right? And then I start thinking, well, that's kind of maybe not so respectful either. So perhaps I should get dressed. So, I get all the way dressed now. I go outside and make my offerings. And, and what I was told by my spirit helpers before I started this is, you will come to know everything you want to know about the masculine and feminine by going out and doing this. Well, that's a pretty big promise. That's a very big promise. So I'm doing this, and then I start getting this idea that, I think I want to, so that's where this whole feeling of, because I didn't really think, I didn't have those thoughts before I started this process. But then I start realizing, this holy star is in constant conversation with this Mother Earth. And the way that she receives that conversation is by bursting forth with life. Life, life, more life, more life, more life. It's in that conversation that our life is made. And so I start thinking, I think I'm going to start dressing well when I go out to do this. So I start putting on some finery to go out and greet the sun. And, there was something so profound about dressing in a beautiful way for someone that has nothing to do with humanity. Because as a woman, where in the power over paradigm, our currency has to do with our looks, and therefore our clothing, our jewelry, our hairstyle, our everything. It's so deeply ingrained, and there are real consequences for not participating in that. You know, as I approached elder womanhood, my husband left. So it was pretty classic. It's a classic phenomenon in that paradigm, especially, right? And so it was very deep for me to bring forth, one, it helped me to consider what beauty is. Like, what do I feel is beauty? What do I feel is beautiful about myself? What kinds of adornments do I put on at that point? And for what reasons? So now I'm putting on adornments because my children gave them to me, because my sister gave it to me, because I was on a journey and I saw it and it reminds me of that place on the earth. And I want to bring that into this conversation between the sun and the earth. And so there was something so healing for me about dressing for the sun now, about dressing for this place that I hold. And you know, the Mother Earth is constantly also dazzling the sun. And so there was something about aligning with her in this way to really present myself and my beauty on behalf of life, on behalf of all life, and not to try to gain a place of acceptance or love or care or power amongst, frankly, some very confused humans. And so it's changed my, I guess I'll say, my deportment hugely, even as I arrive here in this way today.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm wearing these earrings because they were a gift from Saima. And they kind of look like our logo as well. I don't know if friends can see, but yeah, there's something also in the Islamic tradition, again, also about when coming for prayer, to be in your finest clothes and to have bathed and to be perfumed. It's a beautiful practice that you describe. And I guess we're free to try dressing for the sun if we wish and see what unfolds. Thank you. I'm going to take us into our next question. So one of the key understandings you bring, Womaning Stands Shining, is that of the earth as the ultimate authority. And I've heard you speak about this, and it's always really struck me very deeply. So given our theme of her space, which has allowed women to share how they have been reclaiming sacred space and discovering their voices, can you speak about what it might be to live from a place where one truly sees the earth as the ultimate authority?
So it's interesting what just flashed in my mind about the place to start this conversation. So again, you know, in the modern world paradigm, in this power over paradigm, where might makes right, it's really brute force is going to dominate in that paradigm. And therefore men are going to dominate in that paradigm. And so I'm very adamant about saying that men are not the patriarchy. Men dominate in that paradigm. And so that's how it ends up working out for Men's Nation to be plugged into that paradigm. But it's not the men themselves. And actually, I really feel like one of our greatest untapped resources yet to come as human beings on the planet is, what is it going to be like when the sacred masculine really enacts, the male of our kind's perfect design for thriving life? What is that going to be like? Because I feel that day coming. It's already in motion. And so the thing about being in the power over paradigm is anytime you pull out any one aspect of humanity. So if we bring out people of color, immediately, the mobile of power begins to swing, and people begin to ask, wait a minute, if we really consider this, is that giving me more power, or is that taking power from me? As soon as we pull out, here in the United States, as soon as we started saying Black Lives Matter, immediately comes back, well, all lives matter. So there's always this scramble to make sure that the power structure doesn't change if possible. So when we bring out the feminine aspect of ourselves and our kind, and if we talk about the female of our kind, then right away, again, the question comes, is that where does that put me in the power scale, in the power hierarchy? So I just want us to notice that this is a phenomenon of being in there, which is why it's very hard to address many things that are going on in the world right now. And so I'm going to go all the way back to a book I read when I was taking courses at university, and to Riane Eisler's The Chalice and the Blade, which maybe some of you have read. And so one of the things that really struck me in there, I don't remember a whole lot about everything about that book, but the one thing that really stayed with me was this idea that, humanity was not, her proposal, I believe, was that humanity is not a warlike creature. That for thousands of years, there were civilizations or communities anyway, that lived, and her evidence is that archaeologically speaking, they were unfortified. They didn't have big walls around them, which meant that they were not constantly guarding against war. And that that settlements where fortifications began to show up did not start happening until about 5,000 years ago. So she feels like there was a change that happened 5,000 years ago, and then suddenly everybody starts fortifying and getting ready for war. And she also says that in these settlements that were not fortified, that what we find is a lot of figurines of the female body. And so for her, she concludes that this was a goddess culture. These were goddess cultures. And it wasn't until something happened where the shift came, where it became a god culture, meaning a masculine understanding of the divine, that we began to have the need to fortify, and that we became warlike beings. So I've sat with that for a long time. And I'm going to tell you what my feeling is about this evidence. So those figurines of the female figure that were found littered in all these different places, I'm wondering if in fact they weren't actually talking about goddess versus god, or queens instead of kings. Because there were some ruthless queens in the history, we have to admit there were. But what I think maybe was happening was those figurines were actually talking about life. Life, the sacredness of life, that which causes life to be. And I say that because in indigenous cultures, so I sort of represent two here, but I've also spent a lot of time in indigenous ceremonies all over the world. The female of our kind is synonymous with life. And the woman is synonymous with life. The woman is synonymous with earth as well. And there's no, if I were to say that in indigenous community, women are life, women are earth. There's no debate about it. It's like, that's a given. Well, it's like, well, of course. In modern world culture, that becomes a very big debate because the ramifications around power immediately start to kick in. Well, what does that mean when we say the women are life? Well, can't the men be life too? Or, and so it goes on and on right away. So, But it's just interesting to me that in indigenous culture, that's not really the case so much, generally speaking. And so, so when we say, I have another name for myself. I call myself Holy Earth Surface Walker. So this is the name that Diné people have. It translates in English for human beings. So it's not only people who look like me and have clans necessarily, but people who are walking the earth, human beings who are walking the earth in a certain way. We call them Holy Earth Surface Walkers. So I call myself Holy Earth Surface Walker, Life Bringer, Life Bearer. And that's, I happen to have 5 children, but that would be true even if I had no children. Because the life that I'm bringing by being here is understood, and the children that I will have through the creativity that I'm given, and also spiritually, is acknowledged in that. And then I also add to that, and I stand with the full authority of the Mother Earth behind me, as me, through me. And so it is always my place to be able to ask in any situation, are we placing life at the center? That is an inherent authority given to me as the female of our kind. Are we placing life at the center? Because if we're not, then we need to reconsider what we're about to do. We need to reconsider what we are doing. So there is an authority there. And I say, no one can give me that authority, and no one can take that authority from me, but I can abandon it, which honestly, I lived, I'd say, more of my life abandoning that authority than holding it. Holding it what? To club others, to club men, to club non-binary gender folks over the head? No, on behalf of our kind. So I keep this here. This is a very Lakota symbol. And it talks about many things. It talks about the 4 directions and all the spirit help that lies in each of the 4 directions. It talks about cycles of life, seasons. But the other thing that I like to think about when I look at it is it's talking about every single life form gets to have a seat on this sacred hoop of life. Every single life form. Platypus, cacti, amoeba, everybody. And we also get to have a seat on this hoop. And every single being that's on this hoop gets to is endowed with a way of being here that causes all life to thrive. I mean, if we think about all of the rest of the life, all the rest of this community besides the human beings, what everything they do is contributing to strengthening this circle of life, and is also contributing to the thriving of every other being. Wow, that is really something. So I have to believe that we as human beings also have that capacity to make all life thrive. There is some way for us to be here that not only causes our own thriving, but that also contributes to the thriving of every other being. So I want us to consider that for just a moment. And so the question is, am I upholding that place? Are we, so it's not those people over there in Europe, those people over there in Africa, these people here, what we now call the United States. We can't separate anybody out. We have to answer for our whole species on this hoop. This hoop does not understand us and them. It only understands we. And Thich Nhat Hanh, expresses that so beautifully in that word, interbeing. He calls us interbeing. We are so connected. And so I have to ask myself, or I have asked myself, how have I, what does it mean to be the female of our kind here at this time? And how do I uphold our part of the hoop? And so for me, there's a place to go into to look at how to do that. So going back to this question of authority, what I find is that if I align with the laws of life, so we don't get to make up the laws of life. We're trying to. We want to make the Mother Earth bend to our laws. That's what we're attempting to do. And we're seeing the results of it. What are the results? We're killing everything. That's what the result of it is. We are killing everything. We're about to kill ourselves with this stubborn idea that we can bend her to our laws. We cannot. We cannot. There's no way. Charles Eisenstein sometimes talks about, do we really want to live in a world where we can accommodate this divergence from life? It'll be a completely mechanized, barren, sterile world with technology only. And I'm not sure that we can survive that. I mean, I don't know how long we can survive in that. But that's sort of the answer right now that people want to keep coming up with. It's like, no, we need to consider what are the actual laws of this Mother Earth. I mean, it's mind-boggling to me because I think, wow, look at how beautiful this place is. What would be so terrible about aligning with paradise? Really? What would be so terrible about aligning with paradise and all of our relations here? So this is what I speak of is when I talk about the authority of this Mother Earth is she's the boss. She's the boss. She is the ultimate authority here. And every other false authority will bow to her eventually. It can be no other way. And so as for how to begin to enact that place, I'm just going to say that we have to keep asking, what is her way? What is her way? We have to look around us and consider it. Indigenous cultures have a lot to offer around understanding, all of our science in aligning with what is her way, and also aligning and living in such a way where we are acknowledging the sovereignty of all beings, the sovereignty of every other member of this sacred hoop of life. How do we live? So is by modern world standards, that feels like a constraint of our creativity, our imagination, our wealth, our actions. But there are cultures who live for thousands of years in one place without despoiling it, without depleting it, by continuing to ask, how can I use my imagination, my creativity, my understanding in such a way that it only ever creates a situation of thriving life? That's an art, and it is possible. So maybe I'll stop there.
Thank you. Holy Earth Surface Walker, for sharing that with us. Some profound and important interrelated questions for us to consider. So, Women Standing Shining, I have a question for you. As you know, we have a final question for you on a theme that is dear to your heart, my heart, Sima's heart, and I'm sure to many hearts here. And what I'm wondering is, might we make that the answer to that question a part of the closing contemplation and open up for Q&A now? Or should we move straight into this question and maybe shorten the response a little bit, and you could pick up any extra themes through the Q&A? Do you have a preference?
I think we should go for the question.
Let's go for the question. It's a wonderful question. Okie dokie, let's do it. So we're living in a time, as we all know, which has seen great polarity. There seems to be an internal conflict which is mirrored by the outer world. And when we spoke last, Mary came up in our conversation and you asked Sima and I, well, which Mary are you talking about? The mother of Jesus or Mary Magdalene? You noted this tendency to pit the virgin against the whole and the contemplative against the sensual. Can you say more about these women, these qualities, and what this means for you at this time as a woman in her elderhood?
So one thing to say about who's talking to you here is that my grandparents were taken into the Dutch Christian Reformed missionary boarding schools when they were young. And that's where they met, and they ended up marrying. And then they ended up sending their children to the same Dutch Christian Reformed missionary residential boarding school. And so my parents met there. And so I started out being raised in the Christian Reformed Church until I was about 14. And at 14, I got sent away to a different kind of boarding school. And when I realized nobody was watching, I stopped going. That was a very big decision for me to make. It was very scary. It was as it was intended to be. It was intended to be scary to think about departing from that belief system. So I give that as background. And so when I went into my very first indigenous ceremony, which was a Lakota purification ceremony, the Inipi, the sweat lodge, I found a home there. I found a way to pray that involved my whole body. And I went into this place, because again, genders were being called on in different ways. And so there was a spectrum of genders acknowledged. Women were asked to go into the lodge first and men second. Sometimes those who identified as two spirits came in the middle, or it was just left to people to decide how they wanted to identify. And so I was noticing this, and I was noticing that there was something. It wasn't a means of oppression, which is the only way I'd ever experienced genders being separated before in modern world paradigm. It was actually there was something very powerful that could happen on behalf of all of us by acknowledging this. And so I began to inquire in there about, for the first time in my life, about what would a feminine God be like? Is there any aspect of God that is feminine? Because I hadn't experienced anything like that before. And so I began to slowly get some answers. In the Lakota way, one of the principal spirit helpers that came to the people and came to humanity, we could say, is an entity maybe some of you know, called the White Buffalo Calf Woman. And so, she's wearing white buckskin. Usually she's depicted that way. She's very holy. And there's definitely an ethic of modesty in Lakota culture. And so I was seeing her a lot like the Virgin Mary in many ways. And so I was just, I didn't want to be too loud around her. I didn't want to be too raucous in any way. That very kind of, I'll say, churchy feeling about her. And then as I started going through my own healing and transformations that I needed to go through, she appeared to me one time, and I was sitting at my altar in meditation, and these like movies kind of play for me sometimes. And so I saw her, and she was swimming in this pond, and she was skinny dipping, and I was like, whoa, I don't think I've ever seen this aspect of her before. And so she could see me standing there waiting, because we'd been interacting quite a bit in ceremonies and again, as I said, at my altar. And so she came out of the water, beautiful, naked woman, and these two women came and dressed her. But there was something about that moment. And then there was another moment where I saw her get on a horse bareback. She was clothed this time, but she got on this horse bareback, and she just, man, the way this woman could ride a horse, I was just like, wow. And so there was something about those two images that began to like expand this place of what feminine divine can be about. And so I know we want me to keep my response a little bit shorter here. We can continue as we go on, but I'll just say this last part. You know, what I find in my elder years now is my sensuality is increasing hugely. And it's not a sensuality that the world knows how to receive. And in a way I'm not supposed to be that. But energetically, that's what's happening for me. And so it's been an interesting place to be. And I really feel like for this life force, for those goddess figurines that Rianne Eisler was referring to, there is a sensuality to them always. Well, one, they're always naked. They're not like prim and proper dressed up to here, you know, like they're pretty explicit, right? And so there's something about the allowing of that sensuality that I think is so key to our kind being able to hold up our part of this sacred hoop. Now, in the power over paradigm, that place has been suppressed and then hijacked, I'll say, to where everything is over sexualized, over sensualized, which is a huge imposition on the deep sensitivity. I'm going to say of the two of us, men are more sensually sensitive. And that's why in cultures that aren't afraid of a God that is afraid of women's bodies, it's not coming from that place. It's an acknowledgement of the sensitivity of the men, that modesty arises. So how can we bring this sensuality of the woman back, of all ages, in a way that it's not abused, that there's not violence coming with it? And this all has to do with power dynamic, right? How are we going to be able to allow her to reemerge, you know? And I'll stop here by saying, you know, so standing out as the child between the Father, Son, and the Mother Earth, I've been saying, you know, whatever he's saying to her, she likes it. Whatever he's saying to her, she likes it. She likes it such that life is just tumbling out of her nonstop. That's what kind of conversation they're having. We have some passionate parents. And there is something about that lead that so much needs to be healed so that we can follow that line and aspect of ourselves once again.
Thank you, dear one. So it's such a rich conversation to be had around this, and maybe we'll be able to revisit it through the questions. So let's see if there's that possibility. So I have at least 2 to 3 questions that I'm aware of here in the chat. The one from Sister Shakira in St. Louis. Shakira, are you able to unmute yourself, or do I need to do it? I can ask you to unmute, so hopefully.
I've been unmuted.
Wonderful.
So, Holy Earth Surface Walker, this heart would like to ask how to connect with her spiritual ancestors, maternal spiritual female spiritual ancestors. This one never met her grandmothers, and I think that a wound in this family has been a disconnection from ancestors. Grew up in a family where my parents did not speak of their parents. And the contact, well, never met 3 of the 4 grandparents. And so if you have any advice on how to connect with that, you know, have heard stories that has made one want to distance, but there has to be goodness in that, and just wanting to understand how to make that connection so that when one does the beautiful ritual that you offered about inviting that in from all directions, how to break down whatever barriers that seem to exist here.
Thank you. So I think I can say this partly because we have extended family. So I was talking about my clans. So if I were speaking in front of a lot of Diné people and I named all 4 of those clans, inevitably somebody's going to come up to me and say, hey, you're my sister, or I'm your grandmother, or you're my grandmother, you know, and such. And so our extended family is big. And so the way that works is to say, I can't be well if you're not well, to my fellow clan members. And, you know, my clan grandfather says that this is how we've survived. You know, on the part of the reservation that he lived on, we had 50% unemployment. He goes, the United States is freaking out over 10% unemployment. We have 50% unemployment. How do we do it? How do we survive? And the answer is through our clan relationships. So this is, to me, a big counsel to the world also about aligning with how Earth works. It works in community. It's survival of the collaborative and the cooperative, not the survival of the fittest. That's being refuted in every way. So one, I just would ask us to consider that, yes, we have our blood family, but we also have what we call our family of choice. And that's very powerful for us. We also have ceremonies in the Lakota way called Hunka Ceremonies, where we adopt people as relatives. You know, we say, I'm going to adopt you as my sister. I'm going to adopt you as my brother. I'm going to adopt you as my aunt, my mother, you know. And so I think it's also helpful for us to expand our understanding of family and know that this is how human beings all over the planet have lived for such a long time. And then I want to say also that things change. Things change when our blood relatives hit the spirit world. Wherever we go next, they're not the same. We have a vantage there that we don't have here. At least in my cosmology. And I can give you this very radical example. You know, I was called upon to do ceremonies in Europe to address what took place during the witch hunts in 2016, I guess it was. And so we ended up in Spain, and I was with my son and another Diné woman, and we were in this cathedral. Our host she used to bring us after the ceremonies to tour the city of Sevilla, and she'd always bring us into these cathedrals, and she wouldn't even let us change clothes after the ceremony. She didn't bring us home. So we'd be walking around Sevilla like with feathers and beadwork, the whole regalia on, and it was, I think she was pretty pleased about us walking around like that in Sevilla. So we're going into these cathedrals this way. But anyway, she pointed out that King Ferdinand's tomb was at the front of this cathedral, and it was pretty shocking to us to be in that presence. And so my Diné sister, she says, let's pray for him. So we started praying for him, and as we were praying, I could hear her saying, she was sitting in the pew behind me and my son, and we were sitting in front of her, and I could hear her praying, and she was saying, you know, I forgive you. She came to, I forgive you, she said, which is pretty profound, pretty huge. My son says, Mom, I can pray for him, but I can't forgive him. He was, I don't know, 15 at the time. And I said, it's okay, son. You don't have to, but let's pray for him. And so as I was praying, I found myself able to come to that place also to say, you know, I forgive you. I forgive everything that happened. And in that moment, his spirit came to me and he said, tell me, what can I do now? What can I do now? And, I really heard that as him acknowledging, yes, I understand what I did on the planet. And I'm looking to find a way to make reconciliation and restitution. Help me, show me how to do it. And so I advised him that I would call him when we were going to do one of our major ceremonies, in about 6 weeks from that time. And I told him, I'm going to call you and I'm going to bring you to the place where you can ask that question and where they can really answer you. I don't think I'm equipped to answer that question. So I just say that because I was told also that by some curanderas when I had a relative pass, that my father, and we had some difficult things happen, and I was hoping for certain things to happen before he left this world, but they didn't happen, and so I was working with that. And she just told me flat out, no matter how you got along with your father, he is energetically your protector here. So there's no getting around that. And so there are energetic lines that happen regardless of people's capacities or skill levels, or abilities, willingness. And so we can work with those energetic lines. And, so in my prayer, so again, going out and making those offerings, that's a place where I can ask too, how can I connect to you, holy grandmothers? So when I say holy grandmothers, it's big. It's cosmological. It's as well as earth grandmothers, as well as blood grandmothers, as well as other grandmothers that have counseled me and gifted me and helped me in my life. So I guess maybe I can make that clear, but to go out and make that offering to each of the 4 directions in the morning, and then above and below and at the center, man, there's no better place to ask those questions than there, and show me in a way that I can understand. And I'm calling on that which serves light, always specify, I'm calling on that which serves light, life, and love. And I want to know, how can I be supported by my elders, by my grandparents? Yeah.
Thank you. So the questions are now flooding in, which is wonderful, except that we have a very short amount of time. So what we're going to do is we're just going to extend the Q&A just a little bit by another 5 minutes. And into that 5 minutes, I'm going to ask, and I'm going to ask Karen and Rahima and Layla to speak their questions one by one. And I know I'm not giving our dear woman in Standing Shining very much time, but I'm hopeful that she will draw 1 or 2 threads together to share with you before we move into the closing contemplation. So dear one, whatever feels right from what is posed, please respond to that. So let me begin by Karen. And Karen, and then Rahima, and then Layla.
So am I supposed to ask my question now?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. So my question revolves around the release or the stepping out of the power dynamic that occurred when I started dancing. My spirits told me that I needed to dance, and I needed to dance more, and I needed to dance as much as I could. And excuse me, this came at a time when I was leaving my fertile years and moving into my crone years. And I was leaving an academic mindset and moving into a heart-centered place. So it was this beautiful confluence of, allowing myself to break out of myself through dance. And I've done it ever since. Every day I dance. And the experience, as you were describing this movement into sensuality, as we move into that phase, was like, that is it. That's exactly my experience. And when I dance, I feel more connected than anything else I do, including sitting at my altar, praying, anything. The dancing is like instant connection. Sometimes it feels sexual. Mostly it feels like this vast sensuality of connection with everything. It has been so incredibly life-changing for me. I want to understand how my dancing is helping the entire world. So what is it that I'm doing that is helping everything? Because it feels like it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Layla, could you go next?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Fatih John. Thank you, Woman in Standing Shining. I really appreciate all of your sharing today. So very quickly, I realized that I haven't been really sharing much about my my mother and my grandmother and so on and so forth. I don't know beyond my grandmother's mother or stories about them, but still, this is already 34 generations to pass on to my children, but I have never been thinking about it, and I haven't been making a space for it. So if you would have any word of wisdom, how to make that space, how to sit them down or walk with them about these stories and what to pass on, I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Layla. And then just one final, slightly shorter one. I know we have other questions too, but I'm going with them in the order that they have been placed on the chat. Rahima Jan, would you like to unmute? Let me just really quickly see if I'm able to. If not,
there we go.
Thank
Thank you. You spoke about being an elder, and as one who is in that stage of life, I'm not sure really what that means. Our society hasn't prepared us or honored that part of our life. And so how does one honor that stage of their life? What does that mean? It may be a longer conversation or even perhaps another session of talking about those aspects, but I'd like to hear what you have to say, at least briefly. Thank you.
Thank you. So I was told when I stopped menstruating, and I had about 7 years of really consciously understanding what was possible during my menstruation, to dismantle that sacred altar of life and to be able to offer it to the Mother Earth and to be able to receive her guidance and direction, her nurturing, her nourishment, but also her instructions for how to be here, for vision to carry on to the earth to help us be able to realign once again with her, with life. And so I was told, at that time that I was going into labor again, and it felt like it. My symptoms of changing was so radical. And I was told, it's as radical as the caterpillar going into the cocoon and becoming completely liquid and not knowing if they're ever going to be in anything again. And I was like, boy, that sounds about right for me, because everything was changing. And it's so remarkable that the world doesn't acknowledge that this is happening to women. Like 50% of us, or, I guess a lot of us, let's just say, and we don't want to acknowledge that this radical thing happens. There's no support for it. There's no, it's just like, you're supposed to act like nothing is happening. Meaning you're supposed to act like, I guess, some of our masculine counterpart, who have different cycles, but not the same ones that we have. And so I know I'm talking a lot in binary, and I really apologize that I have to open and make my inquiries about how to talk about the spectrum of genders. But I for now, being oriented the way I am, this is a way to begin to explore this. So my apologies that way. But anyway, so I was told, you're in labor again, and this time you're going to birth yourself. You're going to birth yourself as the fruitful woman. So we normally think of the fruitful woman as being the woman who is of childbearing age, but they were explaining to me, no, there's so much more to your fruitfulness at this time, especially beyond the time of raising the children. And when I thought about, gosh, if I had spent every month of my menstruating time in deep inquiry with the Mother Earth, in ceremony with her, so it was like 37 years of months of moon times. Man, by the time I hit that point, I am like a force to be reckoned with, to really you know, this is why the elder women were deeply cherished in so many societies. They were the greatest treasures. And I was told, you are the counterpart to the masculine leadership. You know, if you can see this process through, and they encouraged me not to try to derail it too much with, they told me, stick with what the plants can give you for comfort. So in other words, I wasn't to use synthetic hormones or animal hormones, or, you know, so I tried to stay with anything the plants could give me, I would try to use. And they said, if you'll do that, then you'll get to claim a seat in the grandmother's lodge. And those grandmother's lodges have to be reinstated on the Mother Earth. Again, the world actually does need the elder women desperately. And so I was told that those grandmother's lodges were the counterparts to masculine leadership. So, so what do those grandmother lodges look like? Well, I have to say that probably until this moment, I've even been thinking that it looks like we're all sitting very quietly, prim and proper, but I'm starting to think that actually we're having some pretty wild, ecstatic dancing going on in there. Because that's actually where my heart and soul, and I'm with you on the dancing for sure. So as for what to say to our young people, you know, just to be able to maybe bring out photographs and talk about the women in the family. But I also think that we need to give a larger picture of what is known probably by our family members, because we've been held captive in this modern world paradigm for a long time, relatively long time. You know, remember our history goes for hundreds of thousands of years. So as human beings on the planet. And but for this most recent time of a few thousand years, the way the feminine has been held is not going to help us uphold our part of the sacred hoop. It's not going to help us be able to cause all the rest of life to thrive. And I will say that, you know, in my moon time, I was made to dream and to bring dreams and vision to not just to market so that I could be like this cool thing. It's not about that at all. It's not about me being, you know, receiving this information so we can beat out the men. No, that's still modern world paradigm thinking. It's for all the children to thrive, for all the elders to thrive, for the men to be uplifted and held in their biology, in what they hold, in their sacred masculinity, and the way that they uphold the sacred hoop of life as well. So I'll stop there.
Thank you, Pat. That's just, I asked a lot of you there, though each of those questions I think could have easily been a good 15-minute response, but hopefully, you know, those who asked the questions have something from your response, I'm sure. So we had intended to move into a closing contemplation and a prayer from dear Pat, but and we have really, in terms of the schedule, we have 9 minutes left. But I wanted to say, Pat, that, you know, if you wish, we could consciously make the decision to still have a 20-minute closing, if you're able, because I don't know what you have scheduled next. And we could still do that. And those that are able to remain with us, that's wonderful. You're very welcome. How would that be, Pat, if you still had your 20 minutes?
Well, I think, I mean, I'm available to do that. I think that maybe I would just like to make a closing prayer, and that could go on for a little while, given everything we've covered here. And that will suffice, I think. I mean, that's what I was planning on doing. And so I will say it won't be more than 20 minutes, but it could possibly be a little less than 20 minutes.
Okay, sounds perfect. So I will allow you to do that.
Great. So I think I'm going to sing a little bit more. Did that come across okay with me singing in the drum? The sound wasn't too difficult?
It was good. You know how it is with Zoom, but it was still wonderful. So
okay, well, I'm going to sing a traveling song. And so I just ask that all that was raised here, all that was said and unsaid, we went through some giant topics very quickly. And even though I'm kind of long-winded and talk a lot, we still haven't gone all the way into all of what was raised here, of course. So I just ask that each of us be presented with the people, places, and events that can help us to continue to, again, participate fully in the very highest possibility for life, light, and love as the five-fingered one, as a member of this community of life. And not only life actually on this Mother Earth, but actually in helping this Mother Earth fulfill her destiny, fulfill her commitments to the cosmos, because she also is on a road of traveling, and she also is holding so much in our solar system, in our galaxy, in the multiverse. And let us really feel that all of the work that we do is not only affecting our own quality of life, our own ability as a species to continue to receive this holy gift of life on the Mother Earth, but we are opening pathways in many dimensions, I'm going to say, with beings embodied and disembodied. And I ask us to fully take on the medicine, the beauty, the order, the creativity, the vitality, the joy of the Mother Earth, that we open ourselves not to all the events that are going on around us, but at least just for this moment, and show us how to make it a practice to just sit and feel, her heartbeat, one heartbeat every 10,000 years. That heartbeat is reverberating out and out and out. And we are blessed to stand right upon her and receive that heartbeat. So let us feel that heartbeat again as intelligence, like true intelligence, remarkable creativity. Look at her diversity. Look at her ability to rebalance and adjust herself to bring harmony and thriving life. Anywhere that it is diminished, she finds a way, if we were to leave her to her own devices, to be able to answer whatever has taken place there, bring it back into balance and harmony. So we stand in that vibration. We sit in that vibration every day. We sleep in that vibration every day of that heartbeat traveling through us. That is our contribution, not only to mirror that back to her and to each other, but also going out and out and out as that holy star looks upon the Mother Earth, also looking upon her children, us. So let us radiate out this beauty, this love, this unstoppable force of life out and out and out into the cosmos. Let us sing that song as well in whatever we do, and whatever we say, and wherever we are. So this is the journey that I'm describing now. I'm describing the journey of the continuation of the things that were brought up here, and also the journey that each one of us has. We came here for something. We came here in this wild ride time of human presence on the planet, and there was something that we believed we could bring and that we could do or be here. So I'm asking for us to open up to that burning desire we had to come here now, and let not all of this turmoil, this delusion, illusion, deception that goes on around us, let us be undeterred and instead align with that ultimate authority of the Mother Earth. Let that be the clarity of our hearts, of our minds, of our bodies, of our spirits. And let that clarity bring us health and vitality and ability to truly be the very highest possibility as five-fingered one on this Mother Earth. Show us how to uphold the honor of being human being. So this song I'm singing is a traveling song, and that's the sense in which I mean it, is traveling in that way, with that beauty, with that true power, with that spiritual way that she has, that is spirit and embodied. Hey, well, hey, well, hey, well, And finally, I would just like to acknowledge that holy water, holy mani wachozane wakan, holy water of life, the first medicine, the one that binds all living things together as family. We're so grateful for you. We're so grateful for the way that you carry all of our ancestors to be with us, whether they are known to us or unknown to us, because all of our ancestors had a drink of the very water that we're drinking right now. And not only our ancestors, but the ancestors of the flying ones, swimming ones, creepy crawling ones, four-legged ones, all the plants, all the trees, all the mountains, all the stones even, all the oceans, all the rivers, lakes, ponds, streams. And so we really are bound together by that beautiful, beautiful medicine. And so let all of that wisdom and all that knowledge of how to be here and how to be here in these times of great question. You know, our kind has traveled through those times at other times, and how we did that, how we held ourselves, how we emerged to come around and live again is held within that water. So we reach out to that knowledge and we say thank you. So as we stand in the shower, as we any drink that we have, let us remember that we are drinking the knowledge and wisdom and life of our ancestors. All the ceremonies that have ever been are in that water as well. So all of their knowledge, all of that blessing, let us take that in and let us recognize this beautiful, mysterious, magical creation. We can't even know everything that this creation is, but we have this opportunity to be here in joy, in relationship, in respect, in reverence. And so just open that way for us on this day. Open our hearts to the big love, as well as all of our love for our friends and families, lovers, companions, and ourselves too. So just say, in beauty it is finished, in beauty it is finished, in beauty it is finished, in beauty it is finished. Thank you.
Thank you, dear Pat. Womaning, standing, shining. I love that. It feels active, right? Womaning, to be womaning. Thank you so much on behalf of Fatima and myself and all of our wonderful team at Ray. We're just so deeply grateful and honored to have had you with us today. As always, never enough time, just never enough time. But we hope that we can tempt you back for future gatherings, and especially for two of the main questions that were raised. We hope to do specifically more work around sacred sexuality, and I'm definitely really interested to hear more from Pat about looking at the two Marys, the purity and the sensuality. So we hope we can definitely try to do that. And also Karen's question about movement, that's really important to us at Ray. Embodied existence, so we definitely hope to do something around that as well. So thank you so much, Pat, for being with us, and we'd like to thank you all for joining us. And just a reminder, if you're able to, we would like to invite you to donate to the Diné Reservation crowdfunding to support the elders during this challenging time. You can find the link on our website and also on the Facebook event page that came for this event today. We will be making this session available on YouTube with captions, so please just bear with us while we get around to doing that. But in the meantime, you can watch all the previous sessions from Rayfest from last year on our YouTube channel, and you can find the link for that on our website. And finally, we have another event coming up, a full moon meditation on Saturday, the 27th of February at 9 p.m. GMT. Again, more details on our website. And please do sign up for our newsletter, which you'll find in the footer of our website to get news for future events. And I'll just say our website is rayofgod.com, and you can find us on social media, rayofgod0. But with that, we're only 5 minutes over. I wish we had another hour, but just thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being here with us today. And Pat, so much love. Thank you.
My love to you all. Thank you so much for having me.